So I'm Bryant. I'm from Portland, and I was just at home doing what I usually do, where I feel fortunate that I've been able to connect with an extraterrestrial telepath in my life. Where there's a being I associate with Sirius A. I spent a lot of time at home with who said they can't leave me unattended. Who told me they can't leave me unattended because I was found to be a slave, actually a former slave from Portland, Oregon, and I was thinking this morning. It seemed like psychic creeps were kind of trying to send me some kind of spiritual energy, where they're having like, Brian, I want you to change your narrative again. Once again, I noticed I was frustrated with this behavior, where it seemed like a psychic creep was trying to send me spiritual energy who want me want to change the narrative. I just very much feel like is screw you very much. Screw you very much if you want me to change my narrative. I was thinking about a narrative related that I gave a testimony about in relation to within the last few years, where the being I associate with Sirius A contacted me, and I had this recall of an event that happened about 10 years ago, where I was still active in Project MK Ultra at the time, where I was a slave being given instructions via microwave technology, so they might be termed, in Project MK Ultra, and I noticed. I remember it was about 10 years ago. I was scared for my life as the testimony I was asked to change. I know I'm frustrated with that. And I want to reiterate my testimony today, where basically I don't know what I'm going to do about existing social structures in our country being just without hoping the people involved stand trial. Right? I don't love the legal system in our country. There's real problems with the legal system here in the country. There's real problems with the state here in our country. But it can't be like, Brian, I expect you to sit there and do nothing because sometimes you don't like the state, or you ever consider George Orwell's ideas seriously. No. Um, I should just take a moment to collect my thoughts because I'm going about a mile a minute. And I wanted to take a minute to address the testimony because basically I was ripped away from classes and my friends via Project MK Ultra and put into seclusion or isolation using MK Ultra technology. It's been about 10 years ago since that started for me really suddenly. And I remember there was one instance where I was forced to discard my cell phone. I was forced to discard some valuables by the side of the road. And I just wanted to reiterate the written testimony I produced today, whereas I was taken aside, and then basically I was forced to march in clothes that I didn't usually wear. I didn't usually wear these clothes. It's like it's like something's gonna be. It's like you see me as a stranger on the street. You're gonna go, Something is wrong here. This person is not. Don't want to say well kept. It's not like a little stubble. It's like something big was wrong in my clothing, and that was mandated by the handlers in Project MK Ultra. Remember, I didn't willingly take this journey where basically I was forced to role play a homeless person for a week, where it's like, right, you're going to be like a homeless person on the street for a week. And basically I was forced to sit in a local reservation. I was forced to leave my residence. I had an apartment that was legally in my name. That I was fortunate was being funded by family of origin at the time, and I'm going. All right, I want to sleep in my apartment, not on the street, and I was forced to sleep on the street by the handlers for the better part of a week. And during the week, I felt like a slave being given training to have war with a being I would later learn is called Dogu. And I feel like the handler was making me chase what I perceived as a spiritual being around on the street. And I would later learn that this being I was chasing around was called Dogu. And they're a legend in Japan. I hadn't heard of them before, but they look archetypally like extraterrestrials of the kind one might see in documentaries. Frankly, I want to recommend documentaries and not fiction because I've noticed something about fiction that doesn't line up with my reality that makes me uncomfortable. So basically, for the better part, at least a week during 2015, I was um, I was forced as a slave into training to fight like all Dogu, fight all of them without exception. And nobody asked me like, Bryant, do you want to be part of my fighting squad? Or Bryant, you're enlisted to our secret fighting force in our military unit. So nobody made me feel like drafted as part of a military unit. I wasn't given room and board or compensation. If somebody wants to call this like a secret draft to fight extraterrestrials, I'm going. I'm going. No, I wasn't given a unit number. I wasn't told, Bryant, here's your unit number. Your service starts here. Um, Frankly, if these people were connected to the U.S. Army, who were controlling me using MK Ultra technologies, they do not represent Dugway Proving Grounds. I'm sure of that. I'm sure they don't represent Dugway. And they clearly didn't represent the U.S. Air Force at all. And so I noticed I was frustrated this morning when I was quietly reflecting in my apartment with being I perceive as an extraterrestrial telepath, and I don't feel like is a product of Project Bluebeam or MK Ultra technologies that I feel like is real to me. There's a being that's real to me who's been with me every day of the. Yeah, I just got out of the shower. And I'm kind of frizzy. There's a being who's with me every day, who's been with me every day for something like the last 3 years now, and frankly, when I wake up in the middle of the night, they're right there. I don't want to say under my bed, but I'm having I often have the perception of them over my right shoulder, and I'll turn over my right shoulder and focus on the being I associate with Sirius A, who's been completely peaceful with me, and if I'm having other interactions in my life that are stressful or that I haven't liked, they've helped mitigate those interactions. So I feel like the being I associate with Sirius A has been peaceful with me, and I know I've issued a lot of writing about them over recent years. So I just wanted to take a moment. I should slow down because I'm very excited about this subject, and I could go a mile a minute about it. We go by a minute about the extraterrestrials because it's been about 3 years since I thought I saw like a glowing orange. I don't want to call it orb. It was like a glowing orange pod on the horizon, and the occupant identified themselves to me with a story called Sirius A. They seem completely peaceful to our Nomo. Rest in peace, Nomo. And I feel like maybe I attracted like a Nomo soul through something I did, and they're more associated with Sirius C. As this being seems to coexist with Nomo. And so the Syrians very telepathically sensitive, and I know when I do something like opening my crown chakra to them, they seem to be able to sense my thoughts telepathically, but they don't seem too frustrated by my producing short videos, even though I usually address what's going on in my life and writing. So I noticed I was frustrated this morning, and I wanted to take a minute to make a recording where I just say, hey, whoa, stop. It's like if I want to use really, really strong language here, but I'm going to calm down and collect myself and, hey, whoa, stop it, buddy. Stop it, okay? It came across as a slave march and not like a secret draft to fight extraterrestrials, because if it was like secret draft to fight extraterrestrials, why wasn't I given room and board? Why was my room and board? It's like, here you're on the homeless shelter and you're basically without proper clothing for the week. This wasn't like, I got kitted out and I put on a black suit and was kitted out. But basically, this was quite the opposite of being kitted out. It's like, why can't I have like my belt that week? I cautiously want to go into a detail. They don't say when I got into my police file, but basically, if there's any kind of issue, law enforcement hasn't contacted me personally in writing or any other way. If they're going, hey, who's the new homeless? And that's their job at their undercover cop at the shelter or something, trying to figure me out. Basically, the handler required me to use an assumed name. I wasn't allowed to use my real name in Project MK Ultra. And I'm glad today I just have the Syrian psionic influencer, I want to call them. They didn't seem to be upset with the name Syrian psionic controller. And so if I have a Syrian psionic controller in my life, it's because I'm a former slave. And so I'm Bryant. I spent a lot of time at home listening to the Syrian psionic controller and going back and forth actually between another spaceship in my life, at least one other. One says associated with Nordic type beings, but it's a long story with different Nordic type beings. They're often termed. And so none of my training was to engage in hostility with Nordic type beings, but I dare say sometimes they're escorted by beings who kind of resemble Dogu. And there's sometimes it's like there's the two like Nordic type beings in the pod with the being that resemble Dogu, for example, or in the spaceship with a being that resembles Dogu. And I'm worried about these people who gave me this training are they going to be hostile toward all Nordic type beings, or is this worded in such a way? And nothing about the training was ideological, but I get the feeling that socialists aren't really included. Yeah, at that time in my life, I was trying to go, I don't like the state very much sometimes, and the state really frustrates me itself. But when I think about what seemed like the right and wrong way to rearrange existing social structures, I'm going, why can't I even look at socialist ideology? Why isn't that even allowed with me? I also remember the handlers didn't allow me to read WikiLeaks. I was interested in the website at the time called WikiLeaks, and the work of Julian Assange and connected persons, and I actually was not allowed by Project MK Ultra to engage with WikiLeaks at the time. It's like the handlers are having like, no, right, that's for other people. You're not allowed to look at WikiLeaks. That's just it. It's sort of like I think it's because somebody was forcing at the time I didn't like the state very much, but somebody was forcing thoughts of our laws on me, and none of them were like Heil America kind of people. None of them were Heil America kind of people at all. I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. That can. So this is a very frustrating experience for me to discuss because, against my will, I was kept on the street for the better part of a week. Better part, I feel like it was about a week out on the street, and then it ended in hospitalization. At some level, I'm only glad the MK Ultra handlers didn't force me to have more severe behavior before Project MK Ultra was terminated with me. And when I hear people complaining about MK Ultra, I'm going to presume the worst with what I've gone through. Basically, I understand I wasn't the perfect grad student, but I was not planning criminal behavior when when I ended up in Project MK Ultra. Frankly, I think it's fair to say I didn't like crime very much. I was a person who was worried about crime in my residence. I was worried about crime, criminals. All right, and I think that's just it for now. There's somebody out there in my audience who wanted me to change the narrative about my slave march, and I'm going, nope. It was one of the worst, most harrowing experiences of my life that ended up putting me in the hospital when I was in Project MK Ultra, and I resent the handlers for much. I resent the handlers very much, and I'm glad Project MK Ultra is activated with me today. I'm glad I'm in contact with more, basically more important parties about my life. I'm glad I lived through the experience. Glad I lived through the experience with how insane of a homeless shelter it was, and how some of the people look like they might be using street drugs like crack or meth that just do not interest me at all. And so I was forced to sleep for a week around like crackheads and meth heads, and then something that made me really uncomfortable was how I was made to march around at night, like in the middle of the night after curfew time. And I think pretty sure this is past the statute of limitations. Or basically, it's like I might have been guilty of loitering 10 years ago now. Is the big picture. And so there's real problems in our prison system, but I'm going to hope the people who orchestrated my slave march go to jail. I'm going to hope the people go to jail. And I didn't wake up. I didn't wake up today feeling like, well, salute Team USA. Thank you very much for making me more of a bite to you. I did not wake up feeling that way today. I woke up feeling like um, I'm really worried. I'm really worried about how our state works. I'm really worried about our country sometimes, and it's over the top. And I don't love how it works. Don't love how the state works, but I don't know what I'm going to do to help these people get a just treatment without engaging with the prospect that maybe people who do slave marches need to go to prison. Where I don't love the state, but yeah, at the same time, when I'm forced to consider the social structures that we have, And the only way to here's the only way to correct the behavior without letting a congressional. So I'm Brian. I support congressional hearings into Project MK Ultra. I don't think they're really possible at this time. So I'm worried MK Ultra is being used to get the dirt on people. So something really dirty is going on, where it's like getting dirt on like don't want to say staffers or persons under observation Project MK Ultra. I feel like something really dirty is probably going on after I was used as a slave myself. So that's it. That's like my, if these were my last words, it'd be like our country here in the United States of America is very troubled. I'm basically a middle class person, former international traveler from Portland, Oregon, who's kept as a slave for several years in our country by my handlers who came across as slave drivers. And so nobody put me in like a nice student program where it's like, hey, you're just student this or student that. If there's like student programs connected to Project MK Ultra, nobody put me in a nice student program. It's not a very nice student program. It's like I had a military program and then something else took over, and after a while, MK Ultra was terminated. And it seemed like here's a slave driver making do this, making do that, and I was well, I think I was in MK Ultra constantly for about 3 years, and then I started being in and out of it after about 5 years. So I'm just glad I lived through the experience that led me to the hospital, and that I'm certainly going to place my finger on Project MK Ultra in not extreme states. If somebody wants me to cover up the official activities of Project MK Ultra as extreme states, I really want you to check yourself before you wreck yourself. Because it's clear to me now that Dogu have very advanced technology, and that's the kind of being our country should possibly propose like a technology transfer program with, or some kind of peaceful relationship with, and not where slave march. It's like what are you telling Dogu by slave marching students around them at night, where I mean, are you telling them you're the most brutal monsters, where you're ready to enslave other humans to march? I was forced to do something like march around like a train yard in the middle of the night, and not chasing the crackheads either, like some kind of crazy vigilante. It's like people were outside at night. I don't know if they were just doing crack until. Frankly, where people do crack until they die in my city sometimes, or they do crack or meth or heroin until they die, and they just. I don't know if those kind of drugs put them in altered states where they want to die when they're on the crack or meth or heroin. I've never tried crack, meth, or heroin. I can't be like a former addict who's going to complain about that. It's not allowed. And so I'm really worried about people in our country who do slave marches. Really worried about them this morning. And if somebody wanted me to change my narrative, please, 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 please. I don't want to say check yourself into a mental hospital, but I'm about to. Please check yourself into a mental hospital if you want me to change my narrative about that. And it's clear to me now that Dogu have very advanced technology. So why wouldn't you want to relate to them peacefully? As if I feel like they tolerate me in my Western ways because I'm not forcing Western ways on any of their devoted spirit workers who work in Asian ways, and some of them might have affinities for Asian spiritual traditions. That's my opinion from interactions with Dogo. Because when this journey started, I was sort of like an agnostic, where I'm going, I don't know what to believe about that kind of stuff. And now that the transdimensional field's real, now the transdimensional fields associated with spirituality can be measured. It's like, what do you do? What do you do? That's real to people. Yeah, the sciences apparently. So those of you out there who like slave march students and want like a thank you for asking me to be more of a student. Thank you, please, 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 please. You've got to get your head screwed on straight. Where students aren't going to want to thank you for that kind of behavior. Students are going to go, you who don't like the state very much are going to go, you do. You make me consider the existing social structures, and I don't know what I'm going to do about you without jail. With a serious jail time for you. And so I'm going to thank you, America, thank you for making me more to this creep and that creep. I'm in I'm in this place of indignation when I think about that experience that I figured maybe I should take a moment to give testimony about. And so that's just it. I'm glad I survived through the march where it's like I was forced to slog through the streets of Portland, Oregon at night, um, basically wearing boots. And it's like it's like I'm a big guy. So it's just like, glad they didn't try to make me kick anybody or something. When I think about all the self defense training I've had, I'm just glad they didn't try to make me kick somebody. Or any of the self defense training I've had. So I'm Bryant. I'm from Portland. I don't love crime very much, and I'm worried about state crimes today. I'm worried somebody in our country wants like a thank you card for keeping slaves, and I'm going, yikes. Yikes. So I had to take a, well, I want to call it a few minutes. Wanted to take a few minutes to, I want to say correct the behavior, but somebody might need a behavior corrector where they expected like a thank you. They expected me to thank them for the slave march is what I'm worried somebody expects from Project MKUltra. Or that the mind control could possibly do that. And I'm just glad MKUltra is inactive today, and I have the Syrian Sonic controller, and I will say something else going on. So I can't escape a place of indignation about that because in no way did Dogu leave me feeling threatened, even though I don't say I consume the wrong video games about them. I'd seen like the wrong video games or movies where there's quite possibly propaganda campaigns active about them. You know, they didn't even warn me, you know, Brian, our civilization is going to defend ourselves if you attack members of our civilization. But I suspect they're going to have noticed. Basically, I suspect they're going to notice it wasn't in my intentions. It wasn't in my intentions. I was there on the street. It was somebody else's intentions that brought me there. And so it's not like they got out a ray gun like, Brian, I'm going to hurt you if you hurt, you know, our soul clan of Dogu. Nothing like that happened. And just like they just disappeared, like, okay, the person's chasing me. Person's chasing me. So if I thought I saw Dogu soul at night that night, or what I'd later learned it might be called Dogu, um, I was uncomfortable because I was being forced to disrespect them. Where I'm going, okay, how does civilization work in real life? And what's propaganda? What's entertainment about what I've seen in my life? So I'm Brian. I don't recommend the video game XCOM if you want to get your head screwed on straight about Dogo. Maybe I should just live right there for now because I'm indignant. Just notice I feel indignant and glad to be alive after the slave march experience.